Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to Fantasy Basketball Trash Talk. Today's quick video is going to be talking about who is left. People that are still on the wire that can help you. What I did was I'm in a $1,000 buy-in 12-team, highly competitive league. I went to the wire and I looked around asking the question, who is still out there that has a low own percentage that I think can still provide you value for the rest of season? Who's worth holding for a week or two to see how things shake out? Made a quick list. We're going to talk through it. So let's get to it, as Josh Lloyd would say. First of all, what you're trying to do at the first week or two of the season is ignore the stats, okay? Now you might be going, Josh, that sounds crazy. Why would I ignore the stats? All of the rankings are lying to you right now because players have only played 1 or 2 or at the most 3 games. What that means is one hot game can throw those rankings off. The difference between 2 steals or 1 steal is like 50 spots on a ranking list. So you can't be going off of players' performance off of 1 or 2 games on the stats. But there are things that the first 2 or 3 games this season has told me already. And if you combine that with preseason and our knowledge of last year, you're going to have a good idea of some players you should keep an eye on. So what is a thing that I can do? I'm going to go over here to my Yahoo League really quick, and I'm going to sort the players that are available by MPG, minutes per game. Now, in this competitive 12-team league, Tim Hardaway Jr. at 72% rostered is playing 33 minutes a game. Now, I think someone is going to put a waiver claim in on Tim Hardaway Jr. He's not going to be on the wire very long. The only reason he's even out there in a league this competitive is because someone was trying to win their matchup. But Caldwell Pope, 3% owned. PJ Tucker, 6% owned. David Lee, 3% owned. 29 minutes plus is elite. So you can look at how many minutes a player is getting, and you can extrapolate that based on what we know about their performance. The second thing I'm going to bring up is matchups, okay? If a player has only played 2 or 3 games, and they had a really good game or a really bad game, look at the matchup, okay? A player that I still believe in, that I own in about half of my 10 competitive cash leagues, is Nicholas Claxton, okay? I'm a big Brooklyn Nets fan. I have been watching the games. James Harden is force-feeding him through the pick and roll. He's going to have an adjustment to make. It could take 5 games. It could take 20 games. But the Nets really believe in his defensive versatility. Game 1, he's going against Giannis Antetokounmpo and Brook Lopez. That's a horrible matchup for young Claxton. These are literally some of the most physically dominant 7-foot players in the NBA. Game 2, he also didn't perform that well. Who is he going against? Joel Embiid. Probably the most dynamic, dominant, physically offensive force in basketball. I'm willing to give Claxton a lot more rope, not based on his stats. I'm ignoring the stats, based on his role, which I'm getting to in a second, but also based on his matchups. For the first 2 games, he was going against the hardest possible matchup. Some nights, he's going to be going up against the Warriors, and the corpse of Kevon Looney is going to be chasing Claxton around those pick and rolls, okay? Not every night is going to be Joel Embiid giving him the business, okay? Now, let's talk about roles, okay? What does roles mean? Is a player that hasn't performed well yet being asked to be the 6th man and carry the offensive load? Is a player that hasn't performed well yet being asked to be the secondary ball handler, the backup point guard, okay? These are players that have massive upside. A couple years ago, if you owned Spencer Dinwiddie and something happened to D'Angelo Russell or something happened to Kyrie Irving, you were in for a treat. Top 50 player if you were punting field goal percentage. This year, one of the players that you need to keep an eye on is Ricky Rubio. Now, I did not include him in the list because in every sharp league, people are buying up Ricky Rubio stock. Like, the guy came out here and he's having multiple double-doubles with assists. That's because Cleveland, besides Darius Garland, does not have another primary distributor, okay? What is the role? The role for Rubio is distributor. The role for Mason Plumlee might be rebounder, right? Try to look at, if you can't look at the box score, right? Look at a YouTube highlight reel. Watch 5 or 6 minutes of the team's highlights and ask yourself, okay, ignore who's hitting the 3. Who set the screen? Who passed them the ball? Okay? Who is running off ball that is going to get that shot open? What are the players' roles? Does it translate to fantasy basketball upside? What you want to be looking for is high minutes, high usage, Okay, you can go on Basketball Monster and they have a usage rate. Also, what is their upside? Are there players ahead of them that could get hurt? We're going to see that in a second. Also, look at their 2021 performance, okay? If over an entire season a player was a top 100 player, and right now they're outside of the top 300, remember, ignore those stats, but that player is still getting minutes, that's probably someone that if you have an extra roster spot, and we'll get into the strategy, you should be holding that player. Okay. Who's out there? I picked some players that have really low own percentage. So if you're in a 12-team, 14-team, 16-team league, chances are these players are out here. I think situationally, these guys are going to provide you, they have the potential to provide you with a lot of value for the rest of the season. First one, Doug Mcbuckets. Doug E. Fresh. Wah, wah, wah. The San Antonio Spurs are in a transition period right now, okay? And if there's one thing they like, it's players who can move off the ball, players who can catch and shoot, system guys. Doug Mcbuckets is a system guy. He's a Popovich guy, okay? Last year, he put up fringe top 100 numbers. If you were in a punt stocks build, Dougie Buckets was a top 60 player. He's going to have a much bigger role on the Spurs this year than he had last year on the Pacers. I would be keeping a long eye on Doug Mcbuckets, and if you're looking for scoring and three-pointers, which are something that are hard to get high volume of, everyone's like, oh, I can get threes. Oh, I can get threes. Okay, well, later in the season, you're not going to have a guy who's going to get 10 attempts per game. Doug Mcbuckets might be getting 10 three-point attempts per game for the rest of the season. Next guy that I'm looking at is Eric. If you're in punt field goal percentage, Gordon. Now, remember, as always, my advice is for category leagues. If you're playing in points leagues, then I'm sorry for you. This video is not for you. Head over to Nickelodeon Jr. and they'll give you some advice for points leagues. Eric Gordon, okay, is going to go up on volume. Eric Gordon is being pumped right now. The Houston Rockets would love nothing more than to ship him to any contender or any team that's looking for a stretch player. If healthy, which is a big if, Eric Gordon is a guy that can easily give you 19 or 20 points per game. That is hard to find on the waiver late in the season. I would say look for the Rockets to continue to pump him and for him to be moved sometime in January after the December 15th deadline. Right now, players that were signed in the offseason or recently moved can't be traded until December 15th. So I expect to see Eric Gordon in his current role until at least December 15th. And I expect him to be a high-scoring, high three-point shooting, low field goal percentage player that for a lot of builds is worth owning. There's not going to be a lot of other players like him in deep leagues. Dwight Powell. Dwight Boom. Okay? Dwight Powell is in year 2 of rehabbing from an Achilles injury. Really hard injury to come back from. One of the most athletic players in the league before his injury. I've watched some of the Mavs. He's not quite the same person that he used to be, but he's still pretty fantastic. I think Dwight Powell, once he gets the chemistry right with Luka, once he starts to understand Jason Kidd's offense, is going to be right where he needs to be. He's already getting good minutes. He's already a crazy efficiency player. He can get you rebounds. He can get you blocks. I'm looking at Dwight Powell as a starter. Not a lot of starting centers that are mobile like him are going to be on the wire very long. Kevin Love, okay? God-awful player in real life. In real life, Kevin Love is not going to help you win basketball games. In fantasy, Kevin Love is what we call a unicorn. Now, I do not mean Kristaps Porzingis level unicorn. I do not mean JJJ level unicorn. I do not mean Miles Turner even this year unicorn. What I mean is for the waiver wire, Kevin Love is a rarity. He's going to be a power forward / center that gives you threes, rebounds, pretty much no stocks on low field goal percentage. If you are a punt field goal team or a guard-oriented team and you're in a league that still requires you to have center eligibility, you're always going to have poor performance from your centers. However, Kevin Love's profile looks more like a high-volume small forward or shooting guard than a center. So if you're in a 5-4 or 6-3 punt strategy, Kevin Love is one of the only guys that will perform like Kevin Love that's out there. So if you're one of the 2 or 3 teams that's building a guard-oriented team, I'd be looking at Kevin Love right now. He's had 20-plus minutes. I think it was 24 minutes in each of his last 2 games. The Cavs are looking to profile him. Remember, that's with their crazy amount of bigs healthy. That's with Jared Allen healthy. That's with Mobley, the rookie, healthy. That's with Lauri Markkanen healthy. What happens when one of those 3 players inevitably tweaks an angle? Kevin Love is going to go up. What happens if Kevin Love gets traded to a contender? I doubt it, but let's see what happens, okay? Oshae Brissette. If you guys were paying attention to the Pacers at the end of last year, Oshae Brissette went absolutely crazy. Let me show you guys specifically what he did. So last year, think this isn't a punt. This is not right. 2021, yeah. He was the 91st best player, the 90th best player in 24 minutes per game. 24 minutes is not a lot. That's bench roll, okay? He had a crazy good 18-point game last night when Miles Turner got in foul trouble. Now, you should have Oshae Brissette on your watch list. On your watch list. Do not add him yet. But the second you get that Twitter notification that says that something happened to Sabonis, the second that you get that Twitter notification that says something happened to Miles Turner, snap ad, Oshae Brissette. Hold on. He might still be worth owning in deeper leagues if he cracks the rotation consistently as a backup, but Rick Carlisle is enjoying running his guys into the ground. Sabonis is getting 38, 39 minutes. Miles Turner, if he's not in foul trouble, is getting 35, 38 minutes, okay? Don't expect Brissette to be a monster, but if Brissette gets to start, which he's the next man up on the big man rotation, if something happens to Sabonis, if something happens to Miles Turner, go ahead and get in on Oshae Brissette. Okay, I think I have one more slide. I do. Here's what you need to ask yourself as you're thinking about adding players, right? One, is your matchup locked? Is it Friday or Saturday and you're winning 5-4 and none of those categories are going to get to move over? Like, let's say you're a guard-oriented team and you're winning points by 80 and you're losing blocks by 15 and you're losing rebounds by 50 and you're winning steals by 10, right? All of these categories are set in stone. Your matchup is probably never going to change. You've won 5-4. There's no more categories for you to steal. There's probably no categories for you to lose. That's a great time for you to add one of these speculative players, okay? If you get into Fantasy Basketball Wizard, which is a great tool, it's a Chrome extension, it won't really be useful until week 3. But if you get into that tool and you look at your next week matchup, and or you're using Yahoo Plus, and you're like, okay, well, it looks like I'm favored to win 5-4, that's a great time for you to protect the categories that you're good at and go ahead and add a speculative player, okay? Are you winning? If you're winning, win higher by investing in the long term. If you're losing, you can't afford to sit on a bunch of players and wait for them to pan out. But if you're winning, you can always afford to take small gambles. We preach small calculated gambles here on this channel that I just made, Fantasy Basketball Trash Talk. Okay, does their role change? If you are getting a backup and the backup is barely ownable right now, I love that. I love that. I love that. I cannot stress enough that I love to fill the end of my roster with people that don't start. I love to fill it with backups that are justifiable, not backups that suck, backups that are justifiable, right? I don't want to brag, but I own Ricky Rubio in 6 out of my 10 cash leagues. I look like a genius right now. Rubio is a monster right now. I didn't pick Rubio because I thought he'd be this good. He's way better than I thought he'd be. I picked Rubio because I thought that he would be barely worth owning as a backup, and there's a high chance that Colin Sexton or Darius Garland would get injured or traded. And now, suddenly, Rubio's getting crazy usage trying to facilitate all the young guys Cleveland wants to develop. Does their role change? Is there upside in the role? Get those guys. Hold on to those guys. You want to be the guy holding them when the guy ahead of them tweaks the ankle, or unfortunately, eventually there will be an ACL injury this year. I don't want to wish it on anyone, but when that lotto stick happens, you want to be the one that's holding the ticket. Is someone else better? Okay, I'll tell you how long it is too long to hold a player. It's too long when a better player becomes available. If someone else in your league drops a better player, that's the time to upgrade. Don't hold on to your guy just because they're your guy. Get the best player available at all times, but be patient to hold for that upside. Okay, guys, if you have questions about specific players, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Please throw me a subscribe. Tell me other things you'd like me to analyze. I will be doing more of these videos based on what the Reddit fantasy basketball community and the YouTube comment section say. Have a great day, guys, and have fun and good luck in week 2.